Hi everyone, Josh here with Top Score Tutor. And in this video, we're going to look at some really good strategies that can be applied to every section of the SAT. So let's get started. So the first strategy is to use process of elimination to your advantage. But I want you to cross out the entire answer choice, not just the letter. Let's take a look at an example. So with the example on my screen, the answer choices have a lot of text. And I don't want you to just cross out the letter when you do process of elimination. I want you to cross out the entire answer choice. This is a lot less visually intimidating for me. My eyes can now just really focus on going back and forth between A and D. I don't have all the text from B and C in my way. I know it sounds simple, but when that clock's ticking, we're nervous, we're stressed, and we need every little thing to help us be able to focus at maximum capacity. I'd rather be looking at this as I narrow down the choices than to be looking at this. I'd rather be looking at what I had on the screen before. I know I crossed out B and C, but now I have the text of B and C in my way as I go back and forth between A and D. So don't just cross out the letter, cross out the entire answer choice. It's a lot easier to focus that way. The next strategy that we're going to look at is don't leave anything blank. When there's 1 or 2 minutes left in each section, any answer choices that you haven't even attempted, I want you to go back and make sure you fill in something. But it's really important that you don't just Christmas tree. I want you to pick the same letter every time. So let's say I'm on a section, the time's running out. There's 5 questions that I didn't even attempt. I didn't even get a chance to look at, do process of elimination, nothing. I'm gonna go back and put the same answer choice every time for all 5 questions. Do not just Christmas tree. Don't just go A, C, D, B, A. I have a better chance of guessing more questions correct if I stay with the same letter every time than choosing a random letter each time. I like C. Everyone always likes to put C when they're guessing, but you can use any letter just as long as it's the same letter each and every time. Now, I said for each question that you didn't even attempt, that you didn't even get a chance to look at. If there are questions you've left blank, but you actually had a chance to look at it and do process of elimination and kind of narrow it down, then don't do this. Continue with your best educated guess on that question because you've had a chance to look at it and you read the question, you've eliminated some answer choices. Go with what you do think is the correct answer. This example is good if you haven't even looked at the question. You haven't even attempted it. There's 1 or 2 minutes left and you literally are just taking a complete random guess. You use the same letter each and every time. Another really good strategy is to pace yourself. Please pace yourself, people. Slow down, score more. You want to focus on being accurate, quality over quantity. My students, a frustration I always hear is that I ran out of time on the test. And that seems to really mess with students. I didn't get to finish. I ran out of time. That's okay. Do not rush just to finish the test. Based on my previous video on setting our target goal, we don't need to get every question right in each section. So you want to pace yourself towards your target goal, not be to try to answer every question in the section. Quality over quantity. You want to sacrifice time for quality. Don't sacrifice quality just to finish the test faster. I'd rather only complete half of the test with 100% accuracy than to complete the entire test with only 65% accuracy because I was rushing. I guarantee that first example, I'll probably score better only doing half of the test than if I did the entire test but I was rushing through. Slow down, take your time, quality over quantity, and you will see you do well and your score will improve. The last really good example is to work in your personal order of difficulty. I cannot say this enough, guys. Skip early, skip often. There is no rule in the SAT book of rules that you have to go in order throughout the test. Through your own practice, when you do your homework and you're studying, you want to continuously reflect back on the questions that you're consistently answering correct and the questions that you're consistently answering incorrect. You want to be very mindful of that, because at the end of the day, there will always be questions you struggle with, and there will always be questions that are more time consuming, that are more difficult. You want to save those questions for the end. Don't waste valuable brain power on questions you struggle with if there's still easier questions laying ahead. You want to seek out all those easier questions first that you've identified that you're good at, then you work the difficult questions at the end. So let's take a look on how working in your personal order of difficulty looks like on each section of the test. So for my example today, I'm going to look at the SAT College Board official practice test number 3, if to follow along. So let's look at how working in your personal order of difficulty looks like on section 1. So what you have here at the beginning of each passage on section 1 reading comprehension is what they call a blurb. It gives you the title, it gives you when it was written, and sometimes it'll give you a description of what the passage is about. You want to use this to determine whether or not you want to attempt that passage or skip it. The passages on reading comprehension, they consist of literature, history, social studies, and science. So through your own practice and personal reflection, you want to get good at identifying which passages you understand easier than others. For passages that you know you're good at and understand well, those are always the passages you want to seek out first. Save those dense, thick passages that you struggle with for the end. So looking at this passage right here, the Chartres meta-clue method doesn't really tell me much, but it was written in 1911. I know through my own personal practice and reflection, I do not like passages written a long time ago. It's got that old English, that Shakespeare sounding language, as I like to say. I have a difficult time comprehending those passages. So even though this is the very first passage of the section, I am going to skip this passage and move on to the next passage. Not even going to attempt it right now. So the next passage, we're going to read the blurb and see what the passage is about. Saving our cities and ourselves from the automobile, written in 2012. The topic sounds interesting to me, and it was written recently. So for those reasons, this is the first passage that I'm going to do. I'm going to attempt this passage. I'm going to answer the questions. Then I'm going to continue working in my personal order of difficulty. Let's take a look at this next passage. We're going to read the blurb. You see how this blurb's a lot longer? It's more revealing. Written in 2011, that's already a good start for me. Scientists have long debated how the ancestors of birds evolved the ability to fly. Do you think you would read this passage? It's written recently. Does a topic seem somewhat manageable to you? What would you do? Would you attempt this passage or not? Me personally, I am going to do this passage second because it was written recently and the passage seems interesting enough. But really for me, it's because it was written recently. That's my factor that I've identified whether or not I'm going to attempt the passage or not. So I'm going to do this passage next. I'm going to attempt it. I'm going to answer the questions. Then I'm going to move on to the next passage. So this next passage is a dual passage. It's basically two passages for the price of one. That's more reading that you're going to have to do and more higher analysis questions because they're going to be comparing the passages to each other a lot. There's going to be a lot of questions on that. Also, it was written in passage 1 was written in 1791. Passage 2 was written in 1792. For all those reasons, I'm out, just like Shark Tank. For those reasons, I'm out. I'm going to skip this passage. I don't like the dual passages. Every reading comprehension section has one dual passage. So far, I've attempted 2 passages. So far, I've skipped 2 passages. So we come to the last passage. The first thing we always do is we read the blurb to learn what the passage is about. It was written in 2009. That's already a good start. The honeybee colony collapse disorder, possibly caused by something about their diet. Doesn't sound like the most interesting thing I would have ever read, but it was written recently, which is a big help for me. Another thing I want to point out about this passage, it's not very lengthy. It's literally 1 column, and then it's only a little bit of a next column. Also, you have a chart. I like charts because there's going to be questions about that chart. And those are a lot more straightforward, and I have an easy time. I know I have an easy time with those chart questions. So between it being written recently, it's not a long passage, there's going to be questions about the chart. I'm going to do this passage third. Then, if time allows, I'm going to go back and attempt the 2 passages that I skipped. So that's working in your personal order of difficulty on reading comprehension. Read the blurb and determine through your own practice and reflection whether or not you want to, which passages that you want to attempt, which passages that you want to skip. So now we're going to move on to section 2 and look at a real quick and easy way to work in our personal order of difficulty on section 2. Look at these 4 questions on this page. Just looking at these questions, which questions are you probably going to attempt first? Questions 4 and 5. Questions 4 and 5 don't even have an actual question prompt. It's literally just 4 answer choices. These are grammar and punctuation question types. And I've learned through my own practice that these are a lot easier for me, less time consuming, and I tend to get these questions correct. So within this passage that these questions are based off of, I'm going to do all the grammar and punctuation questions first because they're easy to identify. They don't even have a question prompt. Then when I answer all those questions for that passage, I'll come back and do the other question types, which is dealing more with the organization and structure of the passage itself. Question 3 and 6 are not necessarily difficult per se, but they are more time consuming. I find the grammar and punctuation questions I can knock out super quick, whereas the other questions, I'll get them right, but it takes me longer to answer those questions. So seek out those easier questions first in the writing and language section 2 of the SAT. They're quicker, easier, then come back and work at the more time-consuming questions last. Lastly, let's look at how to work in your personal order of difficulty on the math sections 3 and 4 of the SAT. So the questions on the math sections go in order of difficulty. That means that the first set of questions are easier than the last set of questions. So they start out easier and they progressively get more difficult as the questions go on. So knowing that, you want to focus on the first set of questions more than the last set of questions. They're all worth the same amount of points, so work at the easy questions first. So for example, on section 3, there's 20 total questions. So theoretically, questions 1 through 5 are going to be relatively easy. Then as you progress into questions 6 through 10, it'll be maybe medium level difficulty. And then as you progress through 11 to 15, they're going to become more difficult. Now, I want to make something very clear that more difficult questions does not necessarily mean that it's some super higher order math that you need to know to solve. What it usually means is just there's more math concepts you need to solve that question. It's more time consuming. It's going to take a few more steps. There's some more difficult questions that are actually pretty easy, but you just need to recall more math concepts, and there's a few more steps involved to solve those actual problems. So don't think hard as in like, oh my God, I suck at math. There's no way I'm going to even be able to figure it out. You just need to recall a few more math concepts, and you can definitely solve those problems. So you'll notice I stopped at question 15. That's because the math sections have free response questions as well. So once you get through the multiple choice questions, you'll always come to this page right here to indicate that the remainder of the test is free response, no more multiple choice. The difficulty level resets once you get to the free response questions on both math sections. So coming back up here, questions 16 and 17 are going to be back to being relatively easy. Then maybe 18 through 20, the rest of the test, is going to be a combination of medium hard questions. And it's not like as soon as I get to question 6, bam, it's always going to be medium difficulty. It's not like when I get to question 11, bam, it's automatically going to be difficult. Again, this is just a reliable estimate, kind of a framework to break down that the questions progressively get more difficult as you go on. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you feel as you're progressing through, they get more difficult, continue seeking out the other easy questions on the test. So if I was doing this section, I would definitely focus on questions 1 through 5. I'm going to likely focus on 6 through 10. Then I'm going to, as soon as I feel that the questions are getting too difficult, I'm instantly going to jump to the more easy questions and focus on those as well. I'm going to save the difficult questions like 11 through 15, maybe 19 and 20. I'm going to save those for the very end. And it's the same rule of thumb on section 4. There's 38 questions on section 4, but the same rule applies. So maybe questions 1 through 10 is easy, 11 through 20 medium, and then as soon as you get to the free response questions, the difficulty level sets over again. So make sure you skip around, skip early, skip often within every section of the test. But as I said earlier, at the end of the day, there will always be questions that are either more time consuming and or you personally struggle with and find more difficult, and you consistently get those wrong. Get really good at identifying those questions on every section and skip those questions and save them for the end. So that's it for this video. We looked at some really good strategies that you can apply to every section of the SAT. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. And remember, with consistent and quality practice, it is impossible not to score well on the SAT. I'm Josh with Top Score Tutor. Best of luck.